Welcome to the third in our series of Eastertide fireside chats. I'm here today with the Venerable Sue Jacka, our preacher for the pre-recorded service for the fourth Sunday in Easter. And Sue is the Archdeacon of the Western region of the Diocese and the Rector of the Parish of Trafalgar. Thanks for having a chat, Sue, and thanks for your ministry to us in the sermon this morning and for your beautiful singing voice, which helps us lead the hymns on the video. Really appreciate that. And it was a lovely pastoral sermon, as befits the Good Shepherd Sunday, this fourth Sunday in Easter, and very timely for that, and beautiful weaving in, I think, of the other dimension of Justice Sunday, which falls this Sunday as well, and the pastoral aspects of that ministry. And we'll hear a little bit later from Heather Toms, our prison chaplain. And of course, Sue, you've been a school chaplain as part of your journey. We might hear a little bit about that in due course also. But just on that pastoral note, tell us a little bit about how the COVID-19 restrictions have changed and informed your pastoral practices. Because it seems to me that clergy are very busy doing a lot of different things all of a sudden. Some of the same things, but some different things. And one of the things that I think we're recovering is that kind of core business of the very intensive pastoral work that now needs to take a kind of more of a one-on-one dimension. How's that kind of translating into your context?
Well, I suppose there's two things. One is that quite a number of our people make use of a Zoom service. And then others either don't have the technology or don't particularly like that idea. So they, there's a fair bit of doorstop visits because I try and take, it's not just me, I've got a couple of other people that do help, but get out services, a sermon and a bulletin for each of those people throughout the parish. So it's quite a bit, so there's 3 different towns. And some outlying areas they miss out a bit, or they get them every so often. But there's a lot of those doorstop conversations, and that can lead to bigger, longer and more in-depth conversations, I suppose. So generally I try and exercise a fairly pastoral ministry anyway, in that I try and see people and visit quite a bit.
Yes.
But it's been a lot and for shorter amounts of time. And I think people are quite economical in that sense. There's no sitting down having a cup of tea and a bit of a chat about this or that. But they will tell me that, their daughter in Queensland's having this problem, or, they've had these medical tests or whatever. And I'm trying to share that around a little so that I actually still get to see a lot of the folk that I would normally see. But, so that's probably one of the biggest changes, being really organised. None of this, I'll finish off my sermon on Saturday. Needs to be out early.
That's right.
It needs to be, it needs to be accessible for people to maintain contact.
And speaking of the technology, Sue, there's that good old-fashioned technology of the telephone, which I guess comes back into its own in these circumstances a bit.
Yes, we're certainly ringing up people a lot, and it's a good way of staying in touch. It's again not the same as face-to-face, but it's still a very valuable thing, and nearly everybody has a phone.
That's right, whereas not everyone has access to Zoom or
computers
the internet.
or camera or even just the confidence to use it.
Yeah, exactly. So one of your portfolios, if you like, as an Archdeacon is to serve on the Editorial Committee of the Gippsland Anglican, along with former journalist Philip Muston, and yourself, of course, as a former English teacher, having taught media studies. So we're well served. Tell us a little bit about that work, and what do you think's important about a diocesan newspaper like that as a communication platform?
As a medium, it's a tricky one, but the concept is to really enable people to go beyond their parish or even just their centre in a parish, and to see that there's a lot of possibilities, that God is at work and that there's all sorts of interesting things happening, to have some different viewpoints across the diocese. With our current editor, Sally, she's incorporated a few other aspects, so that's good, just broadening out people's horizons a little, I think. It's a sense of connectedness, that it's not that I just happen to go to this church in this town, but that I'm connected with a variety of people. And many people have told me, of all different ages, that they got something out of reading this particular article, or this was a good idea that they could put in, or this reflection really helped them. So that encourages me. In terms of the media, well, if the Age and Murdoch are having trouble with print media, we're going to be having trouble with it. It's hard for people to actually, for many people, to sit down and actually read print these days. It's not part of their everyday habits anymore, which as an English teacher I find devastating. But anyway, so we are experimenting with different things about ways of putting it out there. I think there's many options. You could have an Instagram page where you just put things up and people are interested, they click on the link and it goes somewhere else, a Facebook page or whatever. At the moment it's currently in a digitised form on the diocesan website, which a few people have told me they've looked at, but only a few. So I'm not sure how would I put it? I'm not sure how effective it is as a communication tool, but the concept is still really important. All throughout that 116 years there's been an understanding that we are a diocese, we stand together, we look after each other. I mean, that was exceptionally well seen in the fires, and people being prepared to support across, particularly in this last set, but I mean in the Bunyip fires, similar things, in the back 10 years ago, 11 years ago, in the Geraldines and that area of the fires too. In the Black Saturday, that area was affected.
And so you have a family, you're married to Ross, who's an artist, you have 4 adult children. Tell us a little bit about family life in a rectory and how you juggle the demands of ministry with the vocation to parenthood.
Okay, that is an interesting one. When I first came to ordain ministry, or to ministry in Sale, we had 3 of our 4 kids with us, so one had already left home. Miriam, the oldest, has special needs. She has Down syndrome, and she's, we set her up to live independently, so that was an interesting transition while we were in Sale. That's since changed, but so that's Miriam, and she likes a visit every so often now. Yes, and then the others, it's tricky because it's juggling, as you would be very well aware. You want to be there and present as a parent. You want to enable young people to think through what's going on in their life and where does that match with what the church teaches, and to own their own faith, as all parents do. So, but it can be a little tricky in that the hours are not predictable. I'm very fortunate to have Ross, who's very supportive. So they've all left home now over that period of time, and the last little bit I've had grandchildren running around the rectory, and they love the Trafalgar rectory because it's a circle house. You can run in circles. The rooms interconnect.
I think I've heard them in the background of some of our Zoom
You
meetings.
have.
It's lovely, happy sounds. So tell us a little bit about your spiritual journey, your faith journey, and also your sense of vocation to ordained ministry. Where did that begin, and how did you find yourself doing the things that you're doing now?
Well, it's been a very long time coming in many ways. I was about 8 when our Link CMS missionary came to their furlough based in our home parish, and I was very much taken by Millie Eagleton, who's since gone to God. She was married to Sid, so we're going back a very long time ago. And she picked up an RE class, and I had her for that. She didn't do Sunday school at our church, but they were around. And her obvious commitment to God and her willingness to put herself at disadvantage there in Pakistan to raise up other Christians to bring the love of God elsewhere was really struck home to me. In my late teens, I became involved with Scripture Union. First off, it was with camps and then bushwalks. Actually led a bushwalk for them at one stage, and then through Theos, which is it came to light over the Malakuta Theos, which had a particular ministry over the summer fire period. But I was based at Echuca and then at Lakes Entrance. So all of it is 17 years of volunteering, which is quite a long time. During that time, I also spent 3.5 years working for Scripture Union, so I trained as a secondary teacher, and I thought that was good. But even though I loved it, I knew that wasn't where God wanted me really. And the work at Scripture Union was good, but it wasn't the main focus at that stage. I felt very called to work with the people that had missed out. They'd flipped through the little gaps in society and were hanging around, particularly young people, hanging around the Flinders Street station and around the inner city areas. And I suppose this is the early 80s, so it was the start of homelessness becoming a big issue. So we moved from a nice area of Ormond and then Bentley to what was an unusual place then, North Melbourne, and operated, at the same time I operated a live-in community. So in our time in East Bentley, we were actually testing that out with a few of us living a shared life. So stay in touch with those people, which is, many of them, some of them I've lost track of. And we had a number of young people live with us because times were tough. So I've always been taken by that bent reed out of the servant songs in Isaiah. The bent reed I will not break, and the fluttering candle I will not put out.
It came through beautifully in your sermon today too.
So from there we actually spent some time at North Melbourne. A few years, or a little while, not that long, and then we bought a house in Kensington and based our work from there. And
And the stirrings of vocation to...
they were there the whole time. We were doing a lot of work in... it was a difficult time. We were doing a lot of work in the little tiny Anglican church there, but a new priest was appointed and he didn't get what we were doing. And so we separated, which was a very sad time. It's a long story, that one, but anyway, so we ran a little house church for about 6 years, which was very effective in many ways. And then I went back into teaching, but at the community school in Kensington. Very pastoral again.
And it's good sometimes for those of us in ministry to have had that experience of brokenness, or with respect to our community of faith, and to know what are some of the things that can create that separation and that sense of being in the wilderness for a while.
Well, a lot of the people that we were working amongst in the high-rise flats by that stage in North Melbourne were single women, most of them. A lot of them had a fellow, whether they were married to him or not, to sort of go off with someone else. And unfortunately at that time, that became my story. My husband left, took up with somebody else from the house church, which made me realise there's good sense in having an organisation behind you. Anyway, he married her after a while, and they were married for a long time, not anymore, but so it's a long time ago. And so that brokenness was it was a shocking, incredibly difficult time, but I certainly understood more about what it actually was like. And I spent a bit of time at Retreat House with that, and Sister Penny, who you may have known, who was a very interesting ball of energy.
That's a good description.
Oh, she was amazing. She lived in Kensington, as deaf as a post, but had a lovely way of dealing with people, and very productive, tiny little garden, but incredibly productive, and enabled people to, she'd feed the masses and all sorts of things from that.
Yeah.
But by that time she'd retired from that and was at Retreat House, and so I spent quite a bit of time down there. And meanwhile I'd been studying, and I left. I only had 2 subjects to go when my ex-husband left, so I just put it on hold for a bit.
Yeah.
Needed to get my own life back together.
Indeed.
And so I do understand a bit about brokenness and the anxiety and the depression that follows that.
Yeah. What comes through in your ministry, we minister out of our own wounds, don't we?
Yeah, and the healing that comes with those wounds too.
Yeah,
I think that's right. the hope that's still there, even if at certain times you might not think there's much there. Just cling on. I used to say I was clinging on by my fingernails, holding on to reality. But I did have 2 children, and that helped me keep going. So they, particularly Miriam with her own needs, needed to be looked after. And so that was.
Reminds me of that wonderful book by Henri Nouwen, The Wounded Healer, and of course the risen Christ has wounds. Another book, Sue, that comes to mind in the course of our conversation, which was given to me by a priest in your region, as a matter of fact, is A Shepherd's Tale, if I'm remembering the title correctly, and it's a really heartwarming account of modern day shepherding practice, pastoral practice in the Midlands of England, and how some of those very traditional practices that you were referring to in your sermon, such as Jesus might have been alluding to in describing himself as the Good Shepherd, are still actually alive and well in our world today. And I found a really touching story to read as I was reflecting on the ministry of shepherding. Just circling back to some of the earlier things you said about your own pastoral practice and the changes that this period has necessitated, what do you think some of the things that we're doing now might be that we want to continue doing or deepen or reflect on further in 6 or 9 or 12 months' time once we come through this period?
I think the focus on relationships rather than material possessions is really important, and a number of people have said to me, well, I used to spend Saturdays shopping. And then, of course, the op shop benefits greatly from that. But, so the real things that seem to matter to people are who's in their life that is important. So they ring family more often, or they're getting in touch with people that they might have gone to school with. People are talking about that. I think within the parish we're trying to encourage some of the lay people to ring each other and just to, some people do that naturally, they've got such a caring heart themselves, but trying to encourage some of the parish councillors to take up that role too. I think that's a really important thing. And I think to recognise that just in the same way that we're not all equal, and we know that when a disaster like this hits, it hits some people a whole lot harder.
Yes.
So people who are already suffering anxiety are going to be worse. People who are already struggling to make ends meet are probably going to be worse. So we've actually been doing something quite sweet in the parish, and people have been donating bits and bobs food-wise, and we've sent things down to Jason, one of our members, is a runner and has a heart for people who are homeless, and also aware very much of the addiction and the mental health issues that often accompany that. Anyway, so he goes down over Wednesday night, and people leave things on the rectory porch table, and I've been cooking up things, and others have too, and he takes down meals, because of course they've tried to clean up the streets from homeless people, but they haven't given them any food. Hotel rooms aren't places you can cook, and they're not places where you can store food, so it's a very difficult situation that they're finding. So responding in a practical way like that is I think one lovely thing that I've seen is these incidental conversations that just happen, which can happen in a quieter, smaller town. So, I try and walk around Trafalgar as much as I can, or Yarrabin if I'm down there. But people will put chairs out on a nice day and they'll sit at a socially isolated distance between each other, and they'll just have a chat to people who are, and that's been quite nice. There's one street where it happens quite regularly. They'll have an extra chair there, and if somebody wants to come along and sit at 2 metres apart, they're allowed to do it. Have a little chat for 5 minutes and then move on. So I think there's some creative ways. I'd like to think people keep doing that once they, people go back to work in a venue rather than working from home. And
so there's something in there about the recovery, excuse me, of the sort of simple but precious gift of community, and just attending to what's happening at the very local level. Immediately, the people immediately around us. The streets where we live, and again that individual kind of attentiveness and awareness of the needs of the other, and the presence of the other.
Yeah, I think so. And like I said this morning, it's recognising that the other, if they might be different, doesn't mean that they're wrong. And we need to be quite humble about examining ourselves to see what it is that, if somebody rubs us up the wrong way, well, what is it about me that might be causing that, rather than assuming it's their fault. And just to extend that sense of hospitality. God extends it to us, so I think we can extend it to others.
Well, thank you, Sue, for the many different ways in which you care for your own people in the parish of Trafalgar, but also for the clergy and people of the Western region and of the diocese as a whole, in your role as Archdeacon, and the way that you communicate that compassion and that love and care of God, not only locally but also through the Gippsland Anglican and other means. And we're really grateful to you for all that. You're very humble about your own ministry, but we acknowledge the many different responsibilities that you carry along with your colleagues. And it's been lovely to hear you break open the Word for us today, and also to have this opportunity to chat a little further with you and to hear a little bit about your story. And thank you for what you've shared so generously and bravely of yourself. We really, really respect and appreciate that. Bless you.